All right, let's talk about a scientific paper from a few years back that is, well, it's just wild. It detailed this experiment that sounds completely impossible, offered an even crazier explanation for what happened, and, believe me, it has a twist you will not see coming.
So here's the big question, right? Can you actually take a beaker of plain old liquid mercury, blast it with sound waves, and poof, create brand new elements? I mean, it sounds like modern-day alchemy, doesn't it? The kind of thing people have been trying to do for centuries. It's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, back in 2014, one paper claimed they did exactly that. Researchers took some mercury, hit it with some intense ultrasound, and they reported finding 13 distinct elements that just weren't there before. An absolutely extraordinary claim.
And if you think that's wild, wait till you hear their explanation. They didn't just say, oh, it's some weird chemical reaction. No, they proposed that the sound waves were literally deforming space-time itself on a microscopic level, and that's what was causing these new elements to form. I mean, we're talking about physics that would completely rewrite the textbooks.
Okay, so let's dig into this. What did they actually say they found? The whole thing hinged on these 13 mystery elements that supposedly just appeared out of thin air.
And the list of elements they reported, well, it's a bit of a weird mix. We're talking gold, titanium, nickel, even radioactive thorium. It just seems totally random, right? Like some bizarre chemical soup with no rhyme or reason to it at all.
So for years, this paper was kind of just out there, an oddity that nobody really knew what to do with. But then an analyst named Nick Fenning decided to take a much closer look, and he spotted something, a really suspicious pattern that was hiding in plain sight the whole time.
Fenning asked a really simple but totally brilliant question. He said, okay, let's just assume for a second it's not deformed space-time. What else could possibly connect all 13 of these seemingly random elements? What's the one thing they all have in common?
And the answer he found was just stunning. It was a 100% correlation. That's right. Every single one of those 13 new elements is somehow related to superconductivity. You know, that amazing property where a material can conduct electricity with zero resistance. They were either superconductors on their own, or they were key ingredients in known superconducting materials. And get this, even the mercury they started with was the very first superconductor ever discovered. The whole experiment was steeped in it.
So you gotta ask, what are the odds of that happening just by pure chance? Well, the analysis actually did the math. It's about 1 in 62,800. Yeah, this was not a coincidence. Something inside that beaker was actively choosing elements that had this one specific property.
Like the analysis says, this wasn't just random luck. It was a quantum selection rule. The environment itself was basically deciding which elements were allowed to form and stick around. And that discovery, it totally changes how we have to look at this whole experiment.
But that was just the first clue. The analysis then found a massive, gaping hole in the original experiment's methodology, a critical electrical variable that the researchers just never bothered to measure.
Okay, quick physics lesson, I promise it's painless. We need to talk about something called electrical resistivity. Just think of it like electrical friction. It's basically a measure of how much a material fights back against an electric current trying to flow through it.
So if something has high resistivity, it's like a really clogged pipe. The electrons can barely get through. But if it has low resistivity, it's like a wide open fire hose. Electrons are just flowing like crazy. And remember that fire hose analogy because it's going to be important. Okay, now here's the kicker. It's a known, well-documented scientific fact that if you blast a liquid metal with ultrasound, which is exactly what they did in this experiment, you can cause its electrical resistivity to just collapse. I mean, completely plummet. That clogged pipe we talked about, it instantly turns into that fire hose. So you have to wonder, right? Did the original researchers measure this? Did they check to see if the resistivity of their mercury was tanking while they were running their experiment? And the answer is no. They didn't measure it at all. This is the smoking gun. They completely missed a fundamental piece of pretty standard physics that was happening right under their noses, and instead, they jumped to this incredibly exotic explanation. So with these two massive clues, the superconductor pattern and the fact they forgot to measure resistivity, the new analysis put forward a totally different explanation, one that doesn't need any deformed spacetime. It's called the runaway galvanic boost. And it's actually a really elegant feedback loop. Here's how it works. Step 1. The ultrasound makes the mercury's resistivity collapse. Step 2. This lets electrons flow like crazy, creating these intense little energy fields. Step 3.
inside those fields, new superconductive clusters of elements start to form. And here's the cool part. Step 4, these new clusters make the resistivity drop even lower. It's a positive feedback loop that just keeps accelerating. And finally, step 5, the whole environment becomes so electrically perfect, so ordered, that only elements that fit into that superconducting state can even survive. It's literally like natural selection, but for atoms.
And this is where the story takes its final and honestly most exciting turn. Because if this new explanation is right, then that original experiment didn't just create a bunch of random chemical junk. It might have done something way, way more important.
The analysis proposes a really mind-blowing idea. What if the mercury, under all that pressure and sound, didn't just spit out random waste products? What if it was systematically calculating the perfect recipe for a brand new, stable, superconducting alloy? See, the original paper didn't just list the elements, it listed their exact concentrations. You know, a whole lot of bromine, a good chunk of titanium, and very specific amounts of all the others. The theory is, that's not an accident. That is a blueprint. The exact ingredients in the exact amounts that you would need to build a new and maybe even revolutionary material.
Which leaves us with one last really tantalizing question. What if we just mixed those elements together? Followed the recipe. No complicated sound waves, no mercury, just mix the ingredients. Could a revolutionary new supermaterial have been discovered completely by accident, with its blueprint just sitting there in a forgotten scientific paper, waiting for someone to finally put all the pieces together?